Yeah. My last riser I had. Do you have any other risers before I get to the last one?
This is fine.
Okay.
This
So this
I
one's
want
gonna
to talk
go.
about this one, but yeah.
This one's gonna go into risers and fallers. It's Roy Hachimura because I could see him going either way because his offensive. I'm really a big fan of his offensive game. He's got that
Yeah, big fan of him.
long body. He's got a great first step. He can get to the basket. Great shooter. But people are really afraid of his athleticism and his defense. And I could see him
Hmm.
going either way. That's the thing. I'm a real big fan of him, but I could see this kid going either way.
Yeah. So I'm a huge fan of him. I know he doesn't have that what people think of. That ability to switch onto maybe ones and twos, or maybe switch up to a four or a five for a little bit of time. But what he does have is something that you don't have to worry about. You don't have to teach. He has a great post game. He can finish over just about either shoulder. It seems like when he gets the ball in the post and he's got someone that's a little bit smaller than him, he just goes to town. And I think you can get mismatches with him. And maybe he doesn't have the best defense. Maybe he's a little slow to read the game, but he's got a 7'2" wingspan. He was able to move around enough. I mean, he's pretty fluid, and I think he could develop into a serviceable defender. And I think his offensive versatility, his ability to step out and shoot the three, his ability to go into the low post and exploit a matchup like that, I think that's the thing that makes him what I think will rise above, have him rise up to. I think he could even be going as high as I've seen him going, 12, 11, 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big fan of his, but could be a faller. And that's my next faller. It's both the Gonzaga kids. It's Brandon Clark. It's Roy Hachimura. Brandon Clark. It's well, I'll talk more about Brandon Clark, but this could just be the Gonzaga thing that they don't play a very strong schedule. They play in a very bad non-conference or very bad conference that they just run over every year. Not really any NBA talent there, and they can just bolster their stats. Brandon Clark, he's undersized, but he blocks shots. He's a tremendous leaper. He's really good at all assets of the game. He's just a fantastic player, and I can see him falling, but I think he's a good player. He needs to stay in the lottery, at least at 14, 10 to 14 range. But I could see them falling.
Yeah, Brandon Clark and Hachimura are kind of yin and yang.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Clark is going to make all the defensive plays, and he's a real big effort guy, stuff like that. But he can't shoot. Maybe he could be a better 3-point shooter, but he hadn't shown it yet. And I think that's one of those things. It's like, don't necessarily count on it. He is a little small, so I mean 6'8". And
yeah, if they want to play in the
really,
4 or the 5.
Yeah, he wants to play the 5. He's not a 4. I think he could play the 4, but it seems like he would really limit you if he can't develop a shot, and he would have to play the 5. He would have to. I mean, right now, Brandon Clark, what he wants to do is become Draymond Green. I mean, that's really what he's got to do. He's got to become which he is a good passer, and he can dribble it, but he's going to have to be better at that. He's got to become Draymond Green if he doesn't get a shot.
It's just this classic Gonzaga thing. They weren't recruited very highly, and now the NBA is not really taking them as seriously. Yeah. All right, you want me to take this next one, or you got the next one?
You got it.
Let's do Bol. I think Bol is going to fall.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those where it's one of those where you know the name, you know Lamelo Ball, you see him being tall, you see a 7'2" guy, doing a crossover, pulling up and making a 3, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's unguardable. It's Kevin Durant all over. Then you look at it, doesn't really pass too much. he gets pushed out of the lane a lot. He settles for these floaters that you're like, what do it's like you can't be falling away and just throwing it up with your left hand. That's not a shot that's going to be there in the NBA. And I think he's one of those. I could see him falling because he needs to get bigger and stronger. His health is a concern. And really, it's like, yes, he can do those pull-up threes, but how effective is that? You don't see pull-up threes happening besides a very select few amount of elite players, and you don't really want a 7-2 center doing a pull-up three. It kind of limits your offense.
Yeah. The durability thing is definitely a big thing. He sat out all year at Oregon. After that injury, he lost 30 pounds. So he's a guy that already needed to get bigger. He lost 30 pounds from the start of the season up until the combine. He's probably the biggest example of a high ceiling, low floor prospect. I don't know. He's got a lot of question marks, and I don't see many teams wanting to take the risk on him. And I think that's why he's going to slip and fall. So let's just do one or two more, I guess. Yeah, we'll just do one or two. We'll do one or two more. I think Grant Williams could also fall potentially. I think Grant Williams is a tremendous player, but I could see Grant Williams. Well, I think Grant Williams is also in the category of Brandon Clark, Rory Hachimura. I can see him going 10, or I can see him going like 25. So
yeah, I think he's very similar to Hachimura. He's got a great offensive game. He can finish over both shoulders. Great low post game. He can make the three. He doesn't like to take the three, but he can make it. He'll make an open 3-point thing. The thing I like about Grant Williams is he was the guy on the number one team for a while. I mean, he was, and that I think that experience, and I know they didn't do so well in the tournament, but still being the guy on one of the best teams, that gives you experience, it gives you confidence, and that's what I would like to see from a player coming out. It's not that you're wondering what he can do. You saw him do it. You know what he can do. He had to do it for them to be number one. So I think that's the difference with him and a player like Cam Reddish. For Cam Reddish, you hope for what he can do. With Grant Williams, you know what he can do. It makes it a lot more consistent, a lot easier to build around. Problem is, if you don't have that spot open, you can't really afford to have your 6'8" small forward posting up. Then there's no reason to take him.
Yeah, the reason I can see him slipping down the draft, he's not as athletic. He's slow on defense, and those are the concerns. He's already undersized, but we've seen what he can do. He's a 2-time SEC Player of the Year. My favorite, you mentioned a lot of great parts of his game. The one part you didn't mention, this is my favorite part of his game. He gets to the free throw line at will. He can get so many free throw shots, and he's a great free throw shooter. And I think that's a very undervalued part of his game, and that can keep him in the NBA for a long time. We'll see where he goes. I'm interested to see where Grant Williams goes. I could see him being the guy that takes over for Al Horford if the Celtics want him. I think the Celtics are number 14. I think that could be a guy there.
Yeah. I do want to talk about one last one of the fallers. Romeo Langford. What do you think is going to be – what do you see with him as someone that brings – the want to take a guy one-on-one, the ability to get to the rim and to finish at the rim, but not a great decision maker, not the best passer, and not really a spot-up shooter. What do you think teams will see when looking to draft or to pass on him?
When they look at Romeo Langford, they're going to see the high school. He was like one of the most touted recruits in the country. He was a top 15, top 10 guy, I think. He's a great finisher. He gets to the rack. He's one of the best finishers in this class. But when they look at him, he can't shoot. He just can't shoot. He shot like 28% this year. His mechanics are off. He came out recently. They said he played all year with a wrist injury. I don't know how true it is. If it is true, I mean, it's definitely going to affect the shooting. But his shooting is still terrible. And I've heard people just really don't like. I heard he didn't really have the greatest workouts either, so I can really see him falling down the board. I don't know how consistent he can be in the NBA. I don't know much about his defense. Indiana, another bad team that didn't make the tournament. And this guy was supposed to be a guy that carried them. Or did Indiana made this last four in? Last four in?
Yeah, they made the tournament, right?
They were either last four
they
in.
definitely made it.
I don't think they made it in. They were either a last four team in or not in at all. I can't remember. But they didn't make it in, I don't think. They were like a 500 team. There's no way they made it in. Anyway, he was a guy that was supposed to step up all year.
And then you're right.
They weren't in it or were in it?
No, they were in NIT. They lost to Wichita State in the final of NIT.
Okay. Yeah, and that was like a Big Ten. It was a down year for the Big Ten, and that was like one of the issues. Like whenever you needed to step up, they didn't step up. Did Indiana was just good for beating like one big team this year, weren't they?
Yeah,
I think they just beat Kansas. I think they just beat Kansas this year. I think that was the only thing. But whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing with Romeo. Anything you want to add about Romeo?
No, I think you pretty much nailed it. He's someone that can get to the rim, can finish around the rim, which is a very important thing to have. But then he doesn't do much else. I mean, you gotta add the playmaking on top of that.
All right. Other guys that could fall, we don't have to necessarily talk about them. Jackson Hayes, we kind of mentioned him earlier. He's a raw player. The offensive game's not really there, but people love the athleticism. He was a guard in high school. He grew like 6 inches. Now he's playing the big man position, so he still has a lot to learn. Bruno Fernando, he's been falling like crazy. He was once a top 20 guy. He's fallen all over the place. He has no offensive game. He's a athlete though. P.J. Washington potentially. Yeah. Anybody else that I missed?
No, but I do want to talk to you about sleepers. Yeah, I have 5 guys that seem to have been proven in college. They played really well, and I want to just see, who do you think out of these 5 guys is going to be the best to come out of here? These guys should be available later in the draft. So from Ty Jerome, Cameron Johnson, Grant Williams, Carson Edwards, and Bruno Fernando, who would you most want to have if you're one of these later teams?
You said, did you say Grant Williams? I don't want to say. Did you say Grant Williams?
Yeah,
I think Grant Williams. Grant Williams is the first guy. Then I would go either Ty Jerome. Did you say Carson Edwards?
Yeah.
I'd go Ty Jerome, then Carson No, man. I'd go Cam Johnson too. Ty Jerome, Carson Edwards. Cam Johnson, I think he can be a scorer. He can be one of those phenomenal spot-up shooters. He's a great shooter. He's a great role player to have. He's someone you definitely can rely on, and you know what you're going to get out of him. Ty Jerome, I think he's a phenomenal player. I think he's really, really good. I think he'll be a late first-round pick. I could see him maybe starting in the NBA one day. I just don't know if he has the athleticism and the size to be effective. He reminds me a lot of Jose Calderon in the way they play. He's got a good mid-range game. He's got that little floater. He's a great shooter. Then Carson Edwards is a question mark because you know what he can do. He can score like crazy. He can shoot the lights out of the ball. But he's kind of like Brandon Jennings. The field goal percentage isn't always there. But I really like him. And then Bruno Fernando, I don't trust really.
Yeah. I think I was something similar. I think Grant Williams the best out of there. I think Ty Jerome, it'll be interesting to see him because it'll be interesting to see if he's able to be good enough defensively, because offensively what's kind of happened now is you just need to get into your own pace, which he does very well, and then he's able to stop quick and shoot. You know, he's got good footwork, so he's not going to blow by you, but it'll get you going to the rack, and then he'll stop and do that floater and make it over you, and I think that can be very effective. It's what James Harden does day in and day out. But we'll see. I'm interested because all of these guys, we're pretty much proven players. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were players that did it. Maybe not Bruno Fernando as much, but I mean, he was very good for a Maryland team that was dangerous in the tournament. Mm-hmm. I think the biggest question mark, which we agree with, Carson Edwards. What's he going to do? Is he going to be able to take the 10 threes a game that he was doing with Purdue? And if he can't take it, how does he fit into the game? Is he going to be able to get into the flow of an offense?
Yeah, I agree with that. Carson Edwards, I think he could also be maybe a 6th man of the year at one point in his career. So I don't know. He's
for sure.
High ceiling, low floor. Sure. High ceiling, low floor. My sleepers, P.J. Washington. I'm in love with P.J. Washington. I think he's a phenomenal player. He's a great scorer, great four. Charles Matthew, guy who tore his ACL during workouts. He's one of the best defenders in this draft, but he's gonna be out a whole year, and it sucked because he's really rising up draft boards. Terrence Mann from Florida State.